Hey, buddy. Do you have something to say? Did you have something to say to our audience? Did you want to say something to the microphone? Okay. Do you want to tell them how awesome they are? Hmm? Apparently not.
Something like
Awesome.
that.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Making a Geek. I am Damien DiCarlo. Today's guest is a very talented musician from Uruguay. She is most known on YouTube, where she covers very complex songs, offers tutorials to get your music published, and has a new debut EP called Vela. Is available now on all digital platforms. Please welcome Maru Martinez.
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, Maru. How are you?
Doing good. How about you?
Good. Thank you for being on the show. How are you and your husband doing during the pandemic? There's been so much chaos and everyone's been hunkered down at home.
Yeah, definitely. We're doing good, thankfully, which I think it's something that not a lot of musicians can say who were relying a lot on like playing live and stuff like that. So we're pretty grateful that our job situation hasn't been affected as much as other people in the entertainment industry. So we're doing good. Thankfully, our jobs are still going.
Is he also in the same industry as well?
Yeah, he is a drummer and engineer and producer. So he has toured a lot in the past, but more recently he's been doing session work from home, where he'll like record drums for bands or mix and produce for bands. So we thought that was kind of gonna come to a halt as soon as like the pandemic broke out, but it seems like more people had more time for projects. So he actually got a lot of work during the pandemic because I guess people were just writing music.
Yeah.
So in that case, yeah, it's been really nice, thankfully.
This is like really the most time I've ever really had to put into, I guess, me, if that makes sense, because normally I'm kind of
Yeah,
out doing my other work. And so while I'm still doing well in my job, it's just that time I get home and to be able to either do some writing or do some art, which is sometimes what I do on the side and just for fun, really. And it's just like that nice time to be able to escape and just do what you love right now.
yeah, definitely. That was certainly the case for me too. Like you said, with the daily life before pandemic, there was a lot. It was just every day was busy and stuff. And then as soon as the pandemic hit, I was I teach music as my day job. I teach guitar at a school and like a store, a music store. So I would just go there physically, teach all my lessons, and then come home. But then as soon as the pandemic hit, I started doing online lessons because all the places were closed.
Yeah.
Uh,
Are you able to
yeah,
do this online at all with your students?
yeah, that's what I was doing. It was all through Zoom during the first 3 months of quarantine. So I was just teaching online and not having the commute and just that whole thing, having to get ready to work and to leave the house. It just freed up all the space that you don't really think about. And I realized, wow, I have so much extra time now that it's almost like everything came to a halt. So I was able to write more and produce more and stuff. So that was really cool as well.
Yeah. Well, like I said,
Yeah.
this is like the best time for that, and I'm really like happy to hear those kind of stories, just because there's so much of, the sadness involved with the pandemic, with with loss and with just the loss of work, but there is to some degree still some time to be able to get into your other careers if you're musically inclined, or if you write, or anything else in that field. It seems like at least there's still that, because if we didn't have any of that, then what would we do?
Yeah, no, it would be pretty brutal without art.
Yeah, the world
Any
needs
sort of, yeah.
it.
Absolutely. Yes, we're not useless, okay?
So when it comes to playing music, you obviously are very talented with what you do in the guitar. Now, when did you first start playing?
I was 14 years old when I started playing. I was living in Uruguay, where I'm from, and I had been wanting to be involved with music for a long time before then. Neither anyone in my family was a musician. Like my parents never played an instrument, my brother also, but my dad especially always exposed me to a lot of music, especially music from American music or music in English, which isn't really that common in Uruguay, or wasn't back then. So I was being exposed to rock and roll players, jazz players. Like he would travel for work to the US or somewhere else, and he would just bring CDs and stuff from like Dire Straits, Fleetwood Mac, Carlos Santana, all these like bands that I never heard of, like Pink Floyd and stuff like that. So I would get a lot of that influence from just his taste in music. So I think that always made me wanting to be involved in music. And then it wasn't until I turned 14, which two of my other friends from school, they started taking lessons with this guitar teacher. So it was three of us. Two of us were taking guitar and another friend was taking bass. So we all started taking lessons together during like a summer. And then eventually they kind of lost interest. And I was just hooked. I was like, okay, this is cool. I want to keep
No,
doing
they
this.
got intimidated because you were really good and talented.
No, I don't think that was the case. Trust me. I was the slowest one in the group.
Now, as far as the school that you teach, but it's not a school, is it? Or is it
When I teach
just like a
currently,
class?
yeah, it's like one of those School of Rock type companies. It's like a School of Rock.
You're Jack Black in the class, and
That's what I try to be.
you try
That's
to
my
make it
goal.
fun for the kids.
Yeah.
What age range are your students? Are they adults that you teach also, or young kids?
Both, yeah. At the School of Rock, it's not School of Rock, by the way. It still has this different name, but it's the same like kind of company. Um, but at that place, I teach mostly kids because it's mostly geared towards like after school kind of music programs like band and rock band and private lessons. So there, I would say the average age is around 10. That's like the average, I would say. My youngest student is probably 6. Oldest is probably around 14. And then at the other store that I teach, that's more like a retail store that has lessons. There I get more like varied age range. Like I get kids and I also get adults who are first learning, which is really cool to teach adults like who are learning guitar for the first time. It's very cool.
Is that is there a difference when you teach, an age like an adult versus a child? I mean, do they grasp it the same way, or do you find it better when they're younger to start instilling this?
Right. So there's definitely a difference in learning between like a young kid and a fully formed adult. The adult, in my experience, grasping quicker, obviously, right? Especially the motor skills,
Sure.
because very young kids are still developing like a lot of their motor skills, so they might not be able to do certain things. So adults definitely learn that quicker. But something that I find interesting about adults is that a lot of them have a lot of almost this like self-consciousness of not wanting to fail or sound bad because you're so aware of yourself when you're an adult, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that's like the trade-off. Like when you're a kid, you're just learning, they don't really care. They're making mistakes every day, but that's how they're learning. But obviously it takes them longer to develop a skill than it would like a adult.
What made you get into teaching?
Um, well, I just wanted a day job that was music related because I only started teaching a year ago as my full-time job. before that, I worked all sorts of jobs that weren't music related. We talked about film and stuff. I was in the film industry for a brief period of time. So I worked as a videographer for a company that makes baby products. So that was my day job for like a whole year in Chicago. I
And
worked a 9 to
were
5
these, was this for like commercials or was it like,
for like their marketing. Yeah,
okay.
commercials for their marketing team. So I would shoot all of their tutorial videos on how to put on a baby carrier and like, you know, all that stuff. Potty videos, potty training videos, all that stuff. So I definitely learned a lot about video that I could then translate to music stuff, but I didn't like it. I wasn't happy at all because I wanted to do music full time. So that's how I got into teaching. When I moved here to Maryland, I just started looking for jobs and I was like, you know what? I might not feel ready like I can teach, but I have to do something that is music related. And that's kind of how I got thrown into or threw myself into the teaching, I guess.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you and I, we've talked before, and you mentioned about being in a band when you were back in Uruguay. Tell me a little bit about that. What was it like being in a band?
Being in bands is awesome. I think it's like one of my favorite things to do as a musician. And also, I think one of the ways I've learned the quickest is by being in a band. So I was in a band in Uruguay and I was in a band in Chicago. And in Uruguay, I was about 16 when I started playing with other people. They were just these kids who lived nearby me. Like we all lived nearby together, but we didn't know each other because we didn't go to the same school. So I think I found them through like Facebook or something, through like a Facebook metal group or something in Uruguay. So we got to playing together and we were just doing Metallica covers. So that was my first band. It was just Metallica covers.
You started with
uh,
the best.
yes, can't complain. So we played a few shows here and there in Montevideo, the capital city of Uruguay. And that was a lot of fun because I had, prior to that, from like ages 14 to 16, it was just me in my bedroom trying to play metal music. No one else I knew liked metal. I was just the weird kid who was in a room all day trying to play guitar. So when I found people that were into the same stuff around my age, that was like awesome. I remember that feeling and it was really cool. Just having someone to share that with, and that pushed me to want to get better because suddenly we're playing gigs and stuff like that. So now it was a real thing. I was like, okay, now I have to get better at this.
Yeah, and that's kind of like in the geek world too. If you meet another geek, you don't feel like an outsider for liking, comics or video games so much. Like if you meet more people like you, so probably it was the same feeling that I got too when I would meet friends that I could connect with over the things I'd geek out with. But in this case, music, and then you could play together
Yeah.
and play live shows. Um, Now, with playing in a band versus now you do solo, what are the benefits of, or pros and cons, I should say, between the two?
That's a good question. Yeah, definitely being a band gave me at least a sense of like, community because my bandmates at every point, whether it was in Uruguay or in Chicago, were always my close group of friends. That's just how it always was for me. Like those were the people who I inevitably would always hang out with just because we were in a band together. And not being in a band and now having moved from the place I lived in for 5 years, which was Chicago, to Maryland, was definitely a big thing because, now I kind of have to start over from scratch if I want to find people to play with and stuff like that. So that's kind of what brought me to just be like, okay, let me just fly solo for a little bit and do my own thing. Because I enjoyed the creative process as well of just sitting here in my room with Pro Tools and programming my drums and recording bass and writing. I really like that. So it's also nice to have that freedom of just, okay, I don't have to answer to anyone. I can just
Right.
sit here and write a song, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
your
not
own
having to deal with,
creativity and your own outlet that you get to choose.
yeah, absolutely. But I do definitely miss playing live. I miss playing with bandmates. So that's definitely something I would love to do sometime soon when all this blows over.
Now, did you do live shows on your own solo yet, or was it just in bands that you did that?
I only did like a couple of open mics, I think, by myself, not really any established gigs or anything. I just released my like solo EP last year. So my idea was to, get a band together, start hopefully touring or playing locally. uh, and I was just getting my bearings. Then all of this happened. So now we're not sure when that's gonna
So
happen.
you're a lot like me with my podcasting. So I had retro game night with a couple of co-hosts, and then now doing this alone is a very different game. Although I like it because it's kind of the same thing. You get to be as creative and do what you want. But in this case, it was different, and so I'm wondering what that would be like if I ever did it live, because I'm so used to having a group of people around me to do it with, and as my co-host. But
Yeah.
now, would you say that performing live was something that you ever got nervous for, or were you always naturally good on stage?
No, I wasn't ever. Like I have terrible performance anxiety actually. It's weird because when I first started playing live when I was younger, in my teenage years back in Uruguay, I remember the feeling as this very exciting thing. Like, oh, I want to get up on stage and play Metallica, and like everyone's gonna think I'm cool and it's gonna be awesome. And now it's like, oh my God, I'm gonna play live. What if I mess up? There's so many notes I have to play. Why
Yeah.
did I do that to myself? It's like, I don't know what happened in the middle of that, but it went from being like this very cool thing to now just, I don't know, anytime I get a good opportunity to perform live or anything, I do feel like a lot of performance anxiety. And I'm working through it, trying to get into the right mindset and do all that stuff. But it's definitely something that I think, uh, yeah, I have to come to terms with and get better at for sure.
And I think most people will always have a little, like, a form of that, no matter what. Like I never got rid of mine really, but I just kept doing it. But it was just one of those things that you would never really guess, judging by, you know, seeing someone perform or talk in public. 9 out of 10 times you can't really tell. Most people will be like, "Oh, you
That's
did
true.
great," but inside you're the one
Yeah.
that's freaking out and you're critiquing yourself. Like, did I say that right? All those things.
Yeah.
Did I play that right in your case? But in this case, I think most people just they don't look for those flaws, so they just see it as a whole. And I keep reminding myself that look at it as a whole, not this particular portion of what I just did.
That's good advice. I mean, do you find that you get into that like mental rabbit hole before, like when you were doing the live podcast, for example, or stuff like that?
I didn't let myself go there. I didn't think
Yeah,
about
that's
it.
good.
It was kind of like the days of the live show, I would be very busy with my other jobs. And then, um, as it came down to the hour, I think I would just rush to the point where I just sat down and I'm ready to go, which could pose a problem for some with performance anxiety, because then you could freak out right when it happens. But for me, it
Yeah.
actually it actually worked out perfectly fine, because then I just segued right into it with the same kind of, like, once you're in quote unquote work mode, you keep going. So for me, I was good with that. But if I spend too much time thinking about it the day of or weeks prior, then yeah, it can get to me a little bit. Let's just
Yeah.
keep it under control and put it in its place and know that, like I said, 9 out of 10 times people won't ever notice, and if they do, they're not gonna, say anything about it. And yeah, it's a work in progress. Every time you do another gig in your case, or another live performance, then the more you get comfortable and you start getting that little bit of confidence that, if there's like a small step, it's not a huge hurdle. It's just a step to, go over, and you'll be fine.
Yeah,
Speed bump, as they say.
yeah, man, that's good advice. I am going to watch that piece of the podcast like, over and over. I'm gonna put it on my phone and then have you remind me
Okay.
next time.
Now, getting back to your music and guitar, I had a question, and that was, when you make a song on the guitar, is there a particular structure that one goes by, or is there just like you play it and just you feel it in the moment? I know nothing about it because I've never really actually played guitar, so I'm
Mhm.
just curious as to how that works.
Yeah, I think every guitar player has their own process. Like I've heard guitar players sing a melody first, for example, and then they play it on guitar, or maybe they start with bass and then they play guitar, or they hear something and then they try to emulate it. For me, it's always been just noodling around with ideas or series of chords that I like that sound really good, and then see where I can take that to, I guess.
So you kind of just essentially, you also could just play around with it, and so to speak. So you're playing a riff, or you're just messing around, and then it could turn into something, right? At that
Yeah,
point. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's
Also,
not something
sorry if there's scratching in the background. My cat is trying to get into my room. So if
oh,
there's a background scratching noise, that's my
no,
cat.
you're good.
He's
He
crying.
he wants to join the conversation.
Yeah.
So I would assume that this also relies not just on any sort of notes, but really muscle memory, right? As after a while, you won't remember what you write down necessarily, but you'll definitely remember when you actually physically play it and you hold it.
Absolutely. It's I would say it's mostly muscle memory. The whole writing it down thing, actually, I started doing it recently because I would realize that I would have ideas and then come back to them 6 months later and be like, I have no idea what I just did there. Because I would record it and then listen back and be like,
Right.
okay, cool, I have a recording, but now I have to backtrack to what I did.
What you
So
did.
then I was like, yeah.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I should probably start writing this stuff down. And now the process usually is starts with the guitar, find something that I like, record it into Pro Tools, and then like write it down. So that's like a 3-step process.
Has
For
it
writing.
ever happened where you've done a really awesome, you know, song, or you did something on the guitar that you couldn't emulate ever again, or have you always been able to just get it back?
Uh, I had close calls when I recorded something in Pro Tools and then I come back to it a year later and like, oh my God, I don't think I can, I don't know what I did here. And I would sit there for an hour trying to reverse engineer what I did. So I don't think it's happened yet because thankfully there's recording software and um, I've been able to retrace my steps, but it's been close calls and it's taken me a long time to kind of figure out what I did. So that's how when I was like, okay, I should probably start writing this stuff down. And now I make it a point to,
Yeah.
or something that I like and I want to commit to, just write it down. So it makes everything longer in the writing process for me, but
Better
yeah,
safe
and
than
then
sorry.
worth it. Yeah, absolutely. And then also I recently started a Patreon account for just people who like to like support me on Patreon and stuff. And a lot of the stuff that I offer there is sheet music and tabs. Because if I post a video on YouTube, for example, sometimes I'll get like comments asking for, hey, do you have sheet music for this? Do you have tabs? So I was like, well, I'm already doing the work of tabbing, writing everything down when I write. So might as well, put it on Patreon. So yeah, if I'm going to spend all that time writing it down anyway, maybe someone will want to have
Then we'll
it.
want
So
to, yeah, take some benefit
yeah.
of it. Do you have your students play your music that you write, or do they?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I would never go to one of my students and be like, hey, look at what I wrote. Learn it.
Check
Yeah.
out what I wrote in expert mode. Go.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, no, I just ask them what they want to do. It's always about them. Like, some kids are too young to know what they like. So in that case,
Right.
I give suggestions of what stuff they could learn that will benefit their playing. But for the most part, it's like whatever they want to learn, whether it's a Billie Eilish song, a Taylor Swift song, a Megadeth song, it's whatever the student wants to get into. Yeah.
Do you find a particular artist easier in their type of music to teach than others?
Yeah, I'm actually super thankful when I have students who like pop music and rock music as opposed to like metal or jazz. Even though I can connect with a metal student much better because I share the same taste
Passion.
for
Yeah.
music. Yeah,
Right.
it's always like, man, he's gonna come to me with some advanced like solo he or she wants to learn. So whenever I get a student that's like, I just love Taylor Swift, and I'm like, thank God. Yes. So
So
not saying that Taylor Swift songs aren't complex in
yeah,
every way.
that's what I was
Just
about
saying.
to just ask you. Is that what you're saying? No, no, I'm kidding.
No.
Now, as far as that kind of music, it translates onto guitar just fine. If you have like a poppy song, or if it's just EDM, or like you could do that.
Yeah, thankfully, like a lot of these songs, especially that's a good question because pop music nowadays is mostly, electronic based. Like you rarely hear like an actual guitar part in pop music anymore. Like, it's more like synths and pianos and vocals or all these like computer generated sounds. Guitar isn't at the forefront of a lot of pop music anymore as it used to be. So that is a good question. But thankfully, a lot of these songs, still have chords and chord progressions that you can pull and transfer over to guitar. But yeah, that's a good question because a lot of music nowadays isn't so much like guitar focused anymore. It's very electronic.
Right. Yeah, it
Yeah.
seems like the going trend right now. Now,
Yeah.
going into what you do, I notice in your choice of music, as I was listening to a lot of you on YouTube, you cover you play a lot of complex riffs. You do you take this as a challenge when you do it, or does this just come naturally to you? You're just like, I'm gonna go into this super hard riff and I'll be just fine.
It's definitely challenging, but that's also part of the reason why I like it. Uh, Sometimes I'll spend a whole month just working on one very technical riff. Um, but it's fun because if the song is particularly challenging and there's like a piece that's complicated, I'll take that as an exercise and be like, okay, every day while I'm practicing, I'm just gonna drill this one riff, and that will be my workout for the day. Um, so by the time that a couple weeks go by, then I feel like, okay, this feels natural now, and I can sit down and record the cover or the song or whatever. Hmm.
I mean, I'm sure every artist and everybody really critiques himself a lot. With your own self critiquing, how long would it take you to make a song that you like that you've wrote yourself?
Long time. Like,
Before you feel
yeah.
super confident that you love it. Not whether people would like it, but you like it.
Right. Yeah, that's also a good question. I'm a very slow writer for sure. Like I know guitar players and musicians who write very technical stuff who just seem to like, I don't know, poop riffs out all day because they just like post, so much and everything they do is like so sick. Or they just release music very often, which is hard to do. Um, so for me, I definitely think I'm on the slow side as far as output goes for writing. But I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with the process of it being like, okay, it might not be the next hit, but I feel good with this, or I feel like I can trust the
Right.
process of it so that I can go through writing, producing, mixing, releasing a little bit quicker. But it took me 12 years of playing guitar to release something just my own. So I don't know if that's the answer, but it
Yeah, no,
definitely,
basically.
yeah,
But I think in this case, for you, it's about quality rather than quantity. At least that's what I would say. And I think with
yeah,
you, it doesn't. You don't just whip out these songs left and right for the mass media. You do it for someone like you that likes it, this particular style. And I think in this case, I mean, you already have. You've created a big following, and I think it's people that like not just the talent, but the style that you bring towards and what you like. So I think that that's like calling to a certain kind of people, and I might venture to say may even, I don't know if convert is the right word, but like you may convert someone into liking metal or this kind of music that they wouldn't normally like, especially because
mm,
you play a little bit of everything.
right, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I recognize like what I do is pretty niche. Like in music, it's very first off, it's very guitar oriented, which we were talking about. Like that's not guitar isn't like the main thing anymore. It used to be that guitar was like, wow, you're so cool, you play guitar. Now it's like, it's cool, but check out my synth sounds. Like, you know what I mean? Like synth and like production is very much at like the forefront of music nowadays. I mean, all pop music is just synths and vocals. So I feel like already guitar is a very niche thing, especially in like the metal community. So yeah, I always have that in mind as well. It's like, okay, well, I'm writing in a very specific kind of style. Uh, and that calls for being technical and being in recording clean takes, which takes long to learn and stuff like that. So I think that also plays a part in how long it takes me to complete a song, knowing that there's all these parts of the process that just have to be like very clean, or I have to feel good about them. Okay, like I got a good take, and then I got good guitar tones, and then I recorded properly, and then I mixed it properly. So it's like I think all of that adds to the time that it takes to fully write and complete a song and put it out there.
And then you have to be happy with it too. I mean, has it ever happened where
Yeah.
you've made a song that you've liked, but then someone else didn't like, and then vice versa? You've made a song that you hate, but then someone's like, "This is really good." Has that ever happened?
Yeah. Yeah, it happens. It's crazy. I mean, not to be like purposely self-deprecating or anything like that, but I'm still shocked that anyone listens to my music because it's such a out there thing. There's no vocals. It's just all guitar noodling for like 5 minutes. I don't listen to my music.
What I like about you, actually, Maru, is that You have a good sense of humility when it comes to your talent. Actually, I noticed in your most recent music video, the most epic video you'll see, if you just going at it in your electric guitar in the middle of a forest.
Oh
Most
yeah.
epic thing I've ever seen, right? And at the end of the video, you're like to your fans, thanks if you made it this far. If you made it this far, this thing was
Thank you.
epic.
You watched it all the way through. Thank
Of course I
you.
did. You have all those YouTube subscribers for a reason, okay? They all will watch it.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank you.
have you, another question I needed to ask you, have you ever played other instruments before? Like anything else besides the guitar?
Yeah. Man, that's kind of like all I want to do. I love all of the instruments. It's just not enough time. But I've tried drums. My husband's a drummer, so he set me up like a little drum kit in our closet here, so I can practice drums. I've tried, I teach ukulele, so I guess I play ukulele as well.
There you go.
I've tried bass. I played bass. I used to play bass in a band in Chicago, and then I just started taking some singing lessons. So I don't feel comfortable in any of those other instruments. It's more like this is really fun. And it also helps with writing because it gives me that other perspective. Okay, if I'm sitting down here and writing a song from scratch, I have to think about, okay, how do I craft a good bass line, or how do I make drums that sound realistic? So having even just a little bit of knowledge in those instruments, even if it's not proficient, but just having had the experience of trying to play a drum groove or trying to play a bass line, I think helps a lot in when you try to write it for that, to write for those instruments, because you have that perspective, I guess.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And once you gain that perspective, then you can kind of, as a whole, know what you're going for, really. Because you could have your own vision, but if it doesn't match with everyone else in some form, I would assume it wouldn't really work, right? If you wanted to do it in a band. I mean, they'd have
Yeah,
to keep up with you, and they'd have to, you guys would have to meet somehow. But if you already know the basic knowledge of those instruments, then you can kind of get the feel of what that'll sound like as a whole.
totally. Yeah. So yeah, I've definitely messed around with other instruments with always kind of like that in mind, trying to add to this songwriting pool, not to think just as like, okay, I'm a guitar player and, I have to be good at guitar and then put all my eggs in that basket. There's a lot of valid things about doing that, but for me, it was always about, okay, I like to songwrite first, guitar comes second. So if spending a little bit more time on other instruments, even though I'm not practicing guitar, if that's going to add to the songwriting quality, then I have to do that. So, and it's also really fun. Like drums are super fun, even though
Right.
I suck at drums, but they're fun.
So I saw a video on YouTube, and it wasn't on your channel, but I assume this might be your husband. You guys were playing a song from Doom.
Yeah, that
Okay,
is my,
okay, that you
yeah.
guys killed it on that. Absolutely killed it.
Thank you.
That kind of music, when you engage with each other like that, I would assume that. I mean, obviously, he's very good at what he does with drums, and you guys connect well. But is that difficult when you've performed before? That if the drummer isn't feeling, or the bass isn't feeling it that day, does that ever happen where they're just kind of someone's a little bit off, and you don't feel like it's that connection?
Yeah, definitely. The good thing about the fun thing about shooting that Doom video was that we were both really into that song because it's so heavy and we're both like nerds about heavy music like that. So we were already very stoked to be doing it in the first place. So in that sense, it was very easy to just, we had a lot of fun shooting that video. But definitely, it's happened before during band practices where, if all of our bandmates were coming from a long day of work and we were all just tired, we were there because we knew we had to practice. It was like, all right, we're just going through the motions. So yeah, I
Right.
think the energy in the playing definitely affects the sound and the performance a lot for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what must be one of the pros on doing solo, is that you bring your own passion into it, if that makes sense. You get to just
Yeah.
jump right in with how you're feeling in the day. If it's good, and if it's not, then you kind of take a break from it. Um, but in this case, with your debut EP, are you now working on anything new? Are you making a new album or wanting to?
Yeah, I have EP number 2 in the works, which has been in the works for a year. So again, I'm going through the process of writing and producing. I enjoy it a lot, but I take my time with it. So I'm planning on actually releasing just singles this time. So last time I just waited until I had all the songs and then released the EP.
Right.
Now I'm just thinking I'm gonna complete a song, put it out there, complete a song, put it out there. So
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty close to wrapping up one song, which I'm excited about. Um, it's still in the recording stages, so it's very early on in the process. But yeah, I'm looking to release new music, hopefully early next year. So that would be cool.
That's good. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely can tell you and your husband are both geeky, and I like that.
Yeah. Oh,
Are
definitely.
you guys gamers?
Not really. Which yeah, we did a Doom cover, but we're not really gamers. It's funny. My husband got an Xbox for Black Friday last year, and I think we maybe used it twice.
Well,
And when he got it, I was like, "Why did you get this? We don't ever play video games." So, yeah.
so then
What
what?
about you? Do you play video games?
Yeah, yeah, I kind of had to for my last podcast. No, I do.
Oh, that's
um,
right. Yeah.
yeah, no, I do have a love for it. Although I would say out of my co-hosts, I was maybe uh, I was kind of the one that felt most passionate about it, but it wasn't that I was an avid gamer, if that makes sense. So it was more about the nostalgia of it and kind of going into what the process was to make it and the memories tied to it. But then I had another guy with me that would be really into it, and he plays games day and night practically. He's always, glued to the controller. But for me, I was kind of more choosy, and I took my time with certain ones and just the ones that I really wanted to. But yeah, I would say a gamer, yeah, at heart, but not as hardcore as some to go on Twitch and start streaming their gameplay all day. I'm not that kind of guy.
Right. Just playing for fun, for your own
Playing for
enjoyment.
fun,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so what would you say you geek out about? When you're not playing music.
I would say movies. We talked a little bit about movies,
You did talk
so
about that. That's right.
yeah, movies and books really. That's about it. Yeah, I used to be really into like working out and stuff like that, but now obviously the gyms are closed, and then music kind of took hold of everything, so I just kind of dropped that. But for like relaxing or just not thinking about music for a bit, I always resort to either movies or reading. That's kind of what relaxes me.
Yeah, I would say
Yeah.
the same. I mean, I've always been a very movie kind of guy. I would say I probably geek out more about that than I would gaming, really. Just because I kind of always I've had a background with some writing and I've done some screenwriting on the side. So it's always been kind of that kind of love for film, but not
Yeah.
just, a turn and burn film. Like it'd have to be something really of quality that I'm going to spend, 2 hours of watching and enjoy rather than just, oh, let's just see what's on TV. I was more specific about my taste, but um,
Yeah.
now when it comes to film, you did videography. Is that how you got into movies, or is that kind of what made you get into videography?
Yeah, so I was always into movies, just watching them, really really enjoyed like the just watching movies like passively as a normal person without criticizing the movie or paying attention to like the filmmaking part of it. Uh, so that was always a thing, like growing up, movie night with my parents and stuff like that. But then when I got into college and I chose film school, then I got into like the whole movie making part of it, which I thought was super interesting. Like working on set and stuff like that. I was a camera tech for a little bit during college, like working jobs that required being a camera tech. So I got to see like how a set works and all the technicality that goes behind making just a nice shot or like a nice take. So that was always very cool. And for a little bit, I considered going into film, especially after film school. But um, yeah, I ended up deciding for music. But I still definitely appreciate filmmaking a lot because what goes on into it is it's insane if you think about it. Like so many people just coming together to create one end product. It's
Right.
insane.
It's
Yeah.
insane when you really think of how much work is involved, how many
Oh
years
yeah.
of production,
Yeah.
pre-production. One of the things I noticed now, going back to music and movies, I'm one to really appreciate film scores, just because to me that with most films that I've seen, if you don't have a really good film score, I'm not really engaged as much to it. And of
Yeah.
course, there is dialogue and character development, all these, like we just said, complex things to make a movie. But um, do you notice music in movies, or is that not something that you're focusing on when you watch it?
No, definitely. Yeah. And Absolutely. So it's interesting because I feel like film scores used to be such a big part of movie making, which I don't know if this is a trend or what, but now it feels like it's not as present. Like a lot of movies that you see coming out of the theaters, it's like, they use pop music or just relevant music that's already playing on the radio as part of their soundtrack, which is cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But you know what I'm talking about? When you see
Yeah.
like a movie from the 90s, for example, there's all this like orchestral, thought out like
Right.
movements and like scenes with their own themes and music and stuff like that. Now it's just like, yeah, we're just going to play whatever's on the radio. I
Yeah,
mean, have you
no, I
noticed that?
totally
Yeah.
understand what you're saying, and I think back, I'm a very retro kind of guy, I guess you could say. But no, for me, like older movies had a certain way about making me feel. I don't know, like I was in the film rather than the movies now. I think there's just so many. While there's great films now, I just feel like a
Yeah.
lot of the films nowadays are turn and burn, very, get through the next and go to the next film and what's the next trailer coming out. But for me, I felt like back then growing up, it was very far and few in between that would be that amazing, and then it would be a little while longer, and there'd be another amazing film, and in between there'd be some. But I feel like now there's just so many that are kind of the same, that they kind of blend after a while.
Totally. Do you have like a favorite film score or soundtrack for a movie that you like?
I mean, I would say the most versatile and the one of the greatest composers I've ever known is John Williams, and I've
Oh
seen
yeah. Uh-huh.
him a few times, and he's great. And he kind of just can do anything. And at the same time, he does kind of sound the same in everything he does, because you can kind of tell when it's a Star Wars film and Indiana Jones film, it sounds the same. But I
Right.
think just the versatility of what he can do, I like that, because he can do pretty much anything. So I would say that would be one, and it would have to be something very memorable. And while some
Yeah.
people could critique that and say, well, he sounds the same in everything he does. Well, it's obvious that you remember him very well, though, because there's a reason
Totally.
why he keeps coming back to do this kind of music and composition. So
Yeah.
that would be mine. I mean, do you have a particular that you like?
Not really anyone specific. I do like a lot of the Trent Reznor stuff he did for The Social Network,
Right.
and I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure he did Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, I think.
And he worked with
But I
Adam
like how,
Ross, I believe, for those,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So I think that's really cool because you can. I mean, I was never a huge fan of Nine Inch Nails. I just never got into them. But a lot of that industrial like rock type sounds he was able to carry over to his soundtracks, and they fit really well. So.
Right.
And everyone likes to knock on Hans Zimmer, but I think he's brilliant.
No, he's amazing. He was gonna be my
Yeah,
second choice, actually. Yeah,
yeah, totally.
really
What you were
fantastic.
saying about John Williams, that people say, oh, it's repetitive or he's always doing the same thing. I've heard people say that about Hans Zimmer, but it works and like it fits the movie really well. So what else do you want?
Right. And I
Yeah,
think that just kind of depends on the person critiquing. They may look for something different out of a film, that would appeal to someone like you and I, that kind of see eye to eye on that kind of thing. But I feel that a lot of Trent Reznor, what is very fascinating about him, like you, he's a solo guy, really. He plays with a band, but
hmm,
essentially he makes all of his music alone.
yeah,
And he'll be like the one man band that does everything, EDM or rock or whatever. And he'll tour with his band, and I've seen him a few times as well. But with his type of music, I think that it says to me more about his process of making it, which I really admire, and how much time he puts into it on his own, rather than working with a band and kind of doing whatever people want. He just kind of makes whatever he feels like, really.
yeah, which is really cool.
And those kind of things segue really nicely into films, which, like ones you mentioned, like Social Network, and that kind of feel was nice. And I can tell it's just kind of him,
Hmm.
going into his style. But to me, it's fascinating when I meet musicians that like to do their own thing, and they excel on their own. They don't need necessarily anybody.
Right, yeah,
So
yeah, it's
that's
cool.
that's going to be you in a couple of years.
Oh, I wish, I hope, I hope you're right.
So,
Yeah.
what are some of your favorite music artists? As in, you mentioned metal. So I know you and I both like Gojira. That's a great metal band.
Yeah, yeah. Right now or like kind of like all
Let's say,
time?
let's say as a
Like,
whole, and maybe some of them have inspired you to do your music.
yeah, Gojira is definitely a huge band I enjoy. It's funny because Gojira, actually, I started listening to them later on in like my 20s. For some reason, I just never came across them in my younger years. Growing up, it was definitely like Metallica, Megadeth, um, Dream Theater was a huge one. I remember when my guitar teacher at the time, he had like a DVD, a live DVD of Dream Theater, and he just let me borrow it for a week. And I never seen like shredding guitar or like anything like that. I was just about Metallica and like all that stuff. So I see this like video of this progressive metal band playing in Asia, I think. Um, and then that's the first time I saw John Petrucci, who's like a very fast guitar player. He's considered like one of the best like
Legend, that guy.
progressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's just doing all this stuff on guitar, and like I remember my face just being melted. So since then, yeah, John Petrucci is a huge influence. And then more recently, I've been listening to a lot more other things, not just metal. Do you know the band Glass Animals?
No, no, I haven't heard of him.
Oh man, really recommend them. They're really cool. Dave Bailey, the main guy in there, he's a producer and he does all of the production, all of the writing, all of the singing. So he's definitely like a huge influence. They're just amazing band. And then Spirit Box is a recent metal band that I started listening to. Very cool stuff. So, yeah.
Is this all like in one form or another, just as inspiration to you, or do you actually listen to music just as in like I like this? I can separate that from me doing music.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like the stuff that I enjoy listening to now has become my inspiration. Because even like a band like Glass Animals, which is totally different, like it's more like a electronic poppy type stuff, but there's still a lot in that is inspiring. Like, for example, I enjoyed listening to the music just for pleasure, but then I can appreciate like, for example, oh, that's a really cool sample he used here, or like that's a really cool way of layering vocals that he did here. So I try not to always think about that way about music. I definitely just listen, but
Right.
yeah, the stuff that I listen to for fun now is also the stuff that inspires me. So yeah,
Because I'm the same way. I mean, most people ask me that. Because I do some screenwriting on the side, and I enjoy it, and I don't really have a job per se for that. But what I do is I just like to make what I would want to see on the screen. A film that I feel people would enjoy. But
yeah,
I feel that a lot of the times I watch a film, it won't be always to just enjoy it. I will try to take something from it or like inspire myself to go back to writing, or a lot of it is just me critiquing it to a point where I just like I don't see anything great about this movie. It's just because like I critique it in such a different way. My standards, like the bar has been raised so high with such great films that we've gotten. So for me, that's
I mean, do you find like you sometimes have to kind of turn that off and be like, all right, I'm just watching a movie. I'm not gonna
it's
think
hard
about.
for me. It's hard
Yeah.
for me. I would say the geeky stuff would be like that when I geek out on comic book movies or Star Wars, Batman, like all the stuff I love. I don't really go into that mode of like, let me critique this and write it better, or this is lacking in here. I kind of take it as what it is, and that is my kind of escape to not think that way. But when I see a true film or that's of quality or claimed to be quality or Academy Award winning, then that's when I get into well, okay, let's take this apart here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Now, going forward, you obviously have great talent, Maru, but where do you see yourself going? What do you want to do, in the years coming forward, post pandemic, with your career?
Definitely would love to tour just because I've never had that experience. So yeah, I think that's kind of like my next goal is just getting a live touring, even if it's just like short ones on like the East Coast or Midwest or West Coast. I'm not talking like a world tour or anything. Just like having the experience of touring, I think would be really cool.
And I
So
think
that's kind of like the goal. Yeah.
Yeah, you obviously have a pretty big following, and so far, I think everybody would go see you tour. So I think you're good with that.
I hope. Yeah, it's always been a thing that I wanted to do, but it for some reason or another, it just haven't been able to do it yet. Because right now it would probably have to be like a fully DIY type thing, like I don't have a booking agent, obviously not with any label. So yeah, just the whole booking of the tour and then funding the tours, you know, how do you get income while you're in tours, I think. So
Yeah.
those are all things that I would, you know, love to put together one day and do for sure.
I mean, you're doing the right thing, in my opinion. You're already appealing to your audience, which is the most important thing at the end of the day, because logistics and all those things can be worked out. But when it comes to then
Sure.
the fans, it your numbers on YouTube and your Instagram kind of speak for itself. You already have a big following. You have fans, and you're working them, especially right now, giving them what they like to hear. Especially right now, pandemic, people are, not really doing much. They're open, to
Yeah.
see talent and to see what's out there, and especially with you. Then on the other side, you're open to having a lot more time to be more creative. So we definitely can't wait to see more from you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, this has been fun. It's great talking to you. So
Yeah, anytime you want to geek out, you and your husband give me a call. We'll geek out
we'll
a
do.
long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we go, where can folks find you, Maru?
So I'm on Instagram. It's Maru Martinez, and then also Faust, which is my second last name. So Maru Martinez Faust, Faust. And then I think, yeah, the rest is either Maru Martinez Guitar for YouTube. Yeah. So if you just type that on YouTube, you'll see my YouTube channel, and then I think I have links to all the other social channels on there as
She
well.
won't be hard to find, everybody. You can find me on Instagram at Damien_DeCarlo, also Making a Geek _podcast. Maru, thank you so much. We wish you the best, you and your husband, to stay safe during the pandemic. Don't go
Thank
anywhere
you.
crazy. Stay
No,
safe.
we'll stay safe. Yeah.
As soon
You
as
as
this is
well.
all
Yeah.
over, we'll definitely see you live. Like, we can't wait to get back together, all of us.
Yeah. That would be cool if I'm ever in the West Coast. I'll hit you up. We'll hang out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't forget to hit subscribe and that little bell on this channel for more cool content. Until next time, everybody, keep calm and geek out. Good night, everybody.